Okay, here we are back at the lab. So I'm going to go over how to get the data logs off your Accessport, how to look at the data, how to trim it, how to import it into Vdyno, and how to chart it so you can kind of see what's going on with the car visually between tunes. So let's get right into it. First off, you need to download Accessport Manager 3.1.5 is the one I currently have. Connect your Accessport. It's usually quite good, at least on Windows, of finding the Accessport right away. And when it comes up, you might be on your map screen. You can see the different revs of your tune and the tunes that come with your Accessport. On our platform, please, for Benny Boy's sake, don't run off-the-shelf tunes. I'm telling you, it's not a Subaru. You could have got a Subaru. You could have got a vape pipe or a vape pen. I don't know. I don't do it. But don't run off-the-shelf tunes. But anyhow, when you open this up, change your filter to data logs, and you will see your logs in here. Notice that they are not named uniquely. They just increment by one. So because of that, I always recommend deleting your old logs off your Accessport, especially because they will kind of round robin and delete themselves anyways once you reach a certain point, I think, or you won't be able to data log. Regardless, kind of good housekeeping is I delete off my old logs. All right, so these three, I say that as there's a fourth one that's not valid, but so these three are my data logs in question. You select them, and then you just hit this to save them to your computer. Real simple. Okay, here's data log 1. I already kind of put it on my desktop. This is actually my car in this picture. The photo quality has been butchered thanks to Facebook, but it's a nice sunset picture up in northern New Hampshire. But anyhow, let's open up the data log. So this is just the way it comes off of my Accessport, what I'm going to show you first. And you can kind of rewind the video to see when we took this data log if you care to, but these are the data logs from the video you just saw. So you get a bunch of variables in here, bunch of metrics, if you will. Your time, you can see here that it samples at a nice 20 hertz plus sample rate, so that's nice for you data guys out there. But here's what we're looking at. So basically, when you send it to your tuner, he's interested in third gear wide open throttle pull from 2,500 RPM to 6,500, right? So if you wanted to trim this down and get it right for Vdyno and for your tuner, you just look at when your throttle position is close to 100. It won't exactly hit 100, but this is your actual pedal position. So you can see here, I step on it right about here, and my RPM is way over here. You know what, I might have fibbed to you. This is already trimmed. I can tell it is because it's starting right at the desired RPM, and we're already giving it some throttle position. Regardless, if you had some noise in there, just cut the rows out before and after your data log. So a couple of the main things to look at in here: accelerator pedal position, your actual air to fuel ratio. Of course, it richens up as you give it more boost, right? Accelerate enrichment to prevent knock and just to pump it more fuel to be safe. Your boost pressure and your targets should be kind of what you're looking for. You know, you don't want to see crazy spikes or not being able to build pressure. Might be a sign that your turbo is kind of on the way out. Let's keep going through here. Math voltage is kind of interesting. So as you approach, I think it's like 4.93 or 4.94 volts. It's a 0 to 5 volt scale. That is telling you when you need to update your intake to a larger diameter pipe, because once you've saturated your analog readout here from your two resistive elements in your intake, here we go. Here's the nerd stuff kicking in. Let me slow it down. If you hit 4.94 volts, you need a larger intake pipe. If you don't, you can get more power out of your stock intake. That's all you need to know. Next is your RPM. This is crucial for all your charts and everything. Okay. Next to that is your physical throttle body position. It only ever gets to 78-ish. It does not get to 100. Do not be concerned if your car does not go to 100. That's it. Next is your vehicle speed. And this is a big one, your wastegate duty cycle. So this is telling you how hard your wastegate's trying on its duty cycle. to hit a certain boost target, right? So if you have more wastegate duty percentage on your PWM, it's trying to more aggressively hit a boost value, right? Or if there's very little wastegate duty cycle, it's just using spring pressure, it's not intervening much, you are hitting your boost targets no problem. I'll show you on the chart where this comes into play, and it's important. Next, well, you will have this thing up here that just says kind of what map you have on there and the specs about your car. Okay, much better than the first time I recorded that. So now I imported a couple of these logs into Google Sheets because I prefer the way that looks. Oh, who's looking at all this Golf R stuff? That's weird. And big turbos? I don't know. I'm not interested in any of that. That's odd. Must be someone else who's using my computer. Okay, so here is what we're looking at, boys and girls. This is how you know if your turbo's running out of steam, if you're picking up torque, if you're picking up boost pressure, if it's coming on earlier, if you're making progress, okay? RPM is our x-axis, and then over here, the red is our boost pressure. So you can see here, we're spooling up, we're hitting full boost. Remember, we're starting wide open throttle here, and you can see that by our accelerator pedal position, right? So we go wide open throttle, our wastegate duty cycle starts to increase as we try to hit a boost target, okay? You come up your boost target, which I think is around 20 pounds, depending on load, in this case, for wide open throttle. So check this out. Remember, this is Rev B of the tune. So we've Rev 2, Rev B. We've already incremented this. We've done this process once. So this is already better than it looked before. So we're hitting 19, 20 pounds sooner than we were before, way sooner than stock. And we are holding it, actually, back up. We never hit 19, 20 pounds on stock. Let's get that straight. So we're only hitting like 15 to 18 on stock. Okay, so we hit our 19, and check this out. Hit our 20, we're holding it all the way to 5,000, and then it starts to decay, but we're still holding strong. 18, 17, and look at what our wastegate duty cycle is doing. It's trying harder and harder and harder until it can't anymore. It gets to 100%, trying to hit that 20 pounds. The turbo is not in its efficient zone of its compressor map. It cannot do it. It's just making heat. And at that point, 17, 16, we peter off. We still hit 18 at the end. So what I'm telling you is this is a strong KO4. Like a lot of KO4s will start to die sooner, and they'll start to die harder than this. Shout out to Bruce Willis. All right, live free or die hard. The fact that this is still holding 16, 17 all the way to red line is pretty darn good for a KO4. Stock turbo, it's got about 50,000 miles on it. So when you pick up big power on the car is when you can keep that 19, 20 plus, 20, up from there all the way to red line, because that is when you are making more power. Torque curve early on, but their horsepower number won't be nearly as high, right? So on that note, let's switch over to the Vdyno. Video's getting a little long, so I don't think I'm going to show you how to import it, but it's really straightforward. You just choose your car, choose the gear, put in your tire specs, and put in your weight, and it will just read these data logs right in and give you a nice estimated dyno chart. It's amazing. It's not the same as a real dyno, of course, but it is a good tool between runs. So if you take a look here, Rev A, I know it's called Datalog 5, but Rev A was, for my first rev of the tune, was the red line, right? So we're hitting 264 wheel horsepower estimated, and we're hitting 325 foot-pounds of torque. Both of those numbers are so much of an improvement from stock. We're rated at 263 at the crank stock. We're rated at 280 foot-pounds at the crank stock, okay? Here, as you can see, 264 at the wheels, front-wheel drive, right? We have less drivetrain loss. Another reason Dan's going to get chopped. And 325, you can pretty confidently say we are well over 300 foot-pounds of torque, and you can feel it when that turbo spools up. You got to have some man arms like this, okay, to hold that wheel straight. So anyhow, our red dyno log when we first started was here. The crucial thing is you got to put in the same settings across the board, use the same smoothing. If you're doing SAE correction, you got to put that in each run. I didn't want to mess with SAE, so I just did smoothing 5, dyno jet, and take a look at our improvement. So Datalog 1 was when the car was the coolest, right? The least boost air temperature. And here, look at this improvement. So on our horsepower, we're up the whole RPM band, and we're hitting about 268 at the wheels, and we're hitting it earlier, like significantly earlier, 43.99. So look at this. We are exceeding the red line all the way from about 4,000 RPM, and we don't converge all the way till close to where the torque and the horsepower intersect at 52.52. So what I'm getting at is not only did we get a higher number, but we got it throughout the whole RPM band, right? And that's what you're looking for, is area under the curve. Shout out to Isaac Newton. Calculus is what's up, all right? Look at our torque. So we started down here on our last run, or our last log, last rev of the tune, 325. Nothing to be ashamed of. That's solid. Dan's car only makes 280, okay? Foot-pounds of torque. Up here, 352. We've picked up, look how much torque we picked up. Over 27 foot-pounds, and we get it just a little bit earlier. All right? So that is in part of the boost coming on a little sooner, and it's coming on higher, right? And you can see that down here. It does a nice overlay of your air-to-fuel ratios and your boost pressures. So check this out. The red guy, right? We're kind of coming in here a little lazy. We're good. On the blue one and on the subsequent, or on the next two, we're hitting a higher boost, right? So at the same point, we're pushing more boost, and we're holding it longer, right? So that's why we're making more torque, a lot more torque, and more horsepower. But again, the reason we're not putting down over 300 horsepower, for example, is look at how our torque curve decays here, right? So once you get a big turbo and you're able to hold that boost pressure throughout the RPM band all the way to red line, you'll see this curve. The torque will get flat, and since horsepower is just a product of torque and RPM, that will get over 300 as well, and it will it'll increase all the way to red line. So that's kind of more the power you're used to on naturally aspirated cars. With a more linear power band, this is more dramatic. It comes on quick and it leaves quickly, but it's efficient. Your turbo spools easily. There's pros and cons of both. And honestly, that's what makes the Speed 3 so fun, is that torque sensation of it trying to rip the wheel out of your hand. That is it for now, fam. Like I said, I put all 3 data logs you watched me do on this chart, along with the one from the other day. This is a good way to quantify that I'm making progress, okay? We'll know for certain when we line up next to that Golf R. But for now, I will catch you later. Peace.